Welcome to the Big E Breakdown, our EKU Sports Network preview show as the Colonels get ready to take on Central Arkansas in Conway this weekend. Got Greg Stottlemyre, Jim Tyree, Wes Chandler here with you as we preview the UCA game, but also talk about Tarleton State last week. Gentlemen, I know that first half was a little bit better and just could not replicate that same type of success once the third and fourth quarter started.
Yeah, just kind of the same old story in a way. And it seems like the lack of production from the offense is wearing down the defense. The defense has not performed as well the last 2 weeks in the middle section of the game. And so it was kind of, it really, the snowball rolled downhill in that second half really poorly. I mean, you look at the offense, they gave up a sack. One of the sacks was on a designed running play, but they gave up a sack in each of the first three series. There was a punt and two fumbles lost. Kickoff defense wasn't good on one, and the defense was put in a tough situation a couple of times as far as field position, and it just got away from the Colonels. But a lot of praise goes to Tarleton guys. They're pretty good. I think they can make a run in the playoffs. We'll see. Wouldn't you like to see a team go out and beat a Missouri Valley Conference team somewhere and really kind of I mean, hey, Missouri Valley Conference deserves everything they get, but I still don't think the UAC is getting enough recognition in the polls.
No, I don't either. I think that, and we've said it all year long. We've said that the UAC is right there with the Missouri Valley as far as top to bottom goes. All through the conference, they're just as good, maybe a hair below the Missouri Valley. But as we've said it all year, you hope that Tarleton, maybe Abilene, if they get in, can make a run, maybe even beat, as you said, Greg, a Missouri Valley team or two. Going back to the Eastern Tarleton game, I know I wasn't there, guys, but believe me, I was there in spirit, and I've preached it all season long. And turnover. You guys get tired of me talking about turnovers, but just one of them can change the momentum of a game, change the scope of a game. Get one sideline into it, one sideline gets out of it, and the game can change on just one. And when you have as many as the Colonels did in the second half of that game, you can't recover against a team that's as good as Tarleton is. So, yeah, you kind of, now that you're past them, you kind of root for them a little bit. Go ahead, guys. See if you can run the table. See if you can get into the playoffs and show that big bad Missouri Valley what you're made of here in the UAC.
Well, the -4 took you from +6 on the year to +2, and it just added to Tarleton's amazing year on turnovers. I just, I, I mean, there's no other way to say it. This is not a good offense, and we've seen just little splashes of hope. The Austin P game was one. There were well over 350 yards in the West Georgia game. Some of that was catch up, but there just hasn't been any consistency, and I think it's worn this team down as a collective unit because it is a team sport. And when you look at team statistics that the NCAA has different offensive statistics, EKU's in the bottom 10 in seven categories. And there's only like 16 categories I track. So they just have not found it. And it's not just on the quarterback or the line or the receivers. It's the entire unit. And there's just not been any cohesion there. And we've seen like glimmers of hope, but it just never has gelled into anything that's really helped him at all. I mean, the offensive output is really low. It's about two touchdowns a game points. That's where they're averaging. And in modern day football, that just doesn't get it done.
Well, two of the categories you got to look at. One of them is first downs. You're just not able to convert on third, and keep the offense on the field, and that's an issue. If you don't get any continuity, any consistency going with your offense, then the other team's offense is on the field more than you are. And again, it, as you said, wears down the defense. The other, you've got to get some passes completed, and this team just hasn't seemed to find any rhythm this season in getting. Yeah, Burkett will have a few that he completes, but then there's another run where he's throwing behind receivers, where receivers maybe aren't running the right patterns. I'm not going to throw it all on Burkett, but there's just no consistency in completing passes. That's another one of those categories you were talking about, Greg. And if you can't find consistency in the offense, you're right. Your defense is going to be out there a lot, and they're going to get worn down over the course of a season. And, you're facing another team, and I know we'll get into Central Arkansas here in a minute, but facing another team that's really good in time of possession and staying on the field with their offense. And that poses a problem.
Well, when you talk about those categories, EKU is ninth in pass percentage as a team, and they're fourth worst in third down conversions as a team. So those are two more categories where they need improvement, and it just hasn't come. And I do think that the offensive line has struggled. I mean, you could see it. You could see a major difference between the protection that Gabalis had in the game versus the protection time that Burkett had, or Montgomery, in the two series he was in briefly. So let's hope it gets better. I mean, I talked to Walt Wells, and through all the rain and the crappy weather, the kids practiced hard this week, and they brought the fight to the practice field. Let's just see if it carries over to the game on Saturday.
Yeah, Wes, it should be more like football weather this weekend. I think I read where it's might even get down into the 40s in Arkansas, at least when it gets dark. The weather is going to be more like football time.
I feel like we went from October to December with the weather. We skipped November entirely the way it is. So maybe with, I don't know what it's been like in Conway all week, but maybe that having a couple of days of kind of bad weather on your practice times, if it does have some weather impact for the game, and that could help you. Were you guys surprised? Tarleton moving up to 2 in the polls this week. Were you surprised at the 1 versus 2 from last week? Not the North Dakota State won, but by the margin that they won.
I mean, that's football nowadays. If it can get away from you. My favorite stat of the entire weekend, when we're getting down on our team or another team gets blown out, was Colorado. They were down to Utah at halftime, 43-0. Dion's team ran 33 plays offensively in the first half and went for minus 18 yards. I mean, you just never know, right? And so I know it doesn't have anything to do with the FCS, but my point is games can get away from teams. And it sounds like it did out west in the Dakotas, and it certainly has to EKU in some halves. So they're just not putting a full complimentary 60 minutes of football together. The best they've done was the Austin Peay game.
Yeah, I agree there. As far as the polls go, you guys know how I feel about it. There's no scientific method to the polls. It's the human factor. And a lot of times I think that the voters aren't educating themselves as well as they should when the polls are voted on. So it didn't surprise me at all. Margin of victory, I think, is probably less of a factor at this level than it is at the FBS level. And I think that's just because there are more eyes on it than there are at the FCS level. And I wasn't surprised at all of any of the poll numbers.
My biggest concern about it's not margin of victory, but UNA allowed a total of 49 points scored by Central Arkansas, and they held EKU to 14 points. And that one touchdown was at the end of the game. So a double-figure loss for EKU, an easy double-figure win for UCA. If you love comparative scores at all, that's one that you hope doesn't come to fruition on Saturday down at Conway.
Jim, I'd love to get your opinion on this real quick before we switch over to UCA fully now. Why is it, do you think, that from one week to another, there seems to be more parity in college football? You see one team really, really struggle one week, and then the next week it may be against a superior opponent, and they come out and play the best game of the year. Why do you think that?
I think that the transfer portal has evened the playing field so much that playing style actually matters these days. I think that you're going to have teams that you match up well against, and then teams that you do not match up well against. And from week to week, it can change. I think it's more like college basketball now than any other time in history. And it's because transfer portal system has evened things out. You've got different rules on how you get athletes. recruiting is a much different game now than it used to be. And you also have the fact that players can be paid. So I think you're talking about the margins of difference, but from team to team being a lot smaller, and the playing styles actually being a part of what goes on from Saturday to Saturday. I use college basketball as a comparison. Maybe even the NFL is a little bit of a comparison. You can have a team that gets blown out by 41 week, and the next week they sneak up and they beat a team. And it's about playing style. It's about the type of athletes they have and how those athletes match up against each other on any given day.
There's a lot of roster overhaul on both sides, the EKU side and the UCA side. Let's talk about the 2025 version of these two teams now. And anytime that these two teams get together, it seems like it always comes down to the last play of the game. What do you guys anticipate this year?
Well, there's no Darius Hale. There's no Shanderick Powell. They were the 1-2 guys in running back, and they combined for a total of 7,223 yards and over 80 touchdowns. Will McIlvaine, who started last year against EKU, over 7,100 yards as a quarterback, and then the great David Walker, who was named the Buck Buchanan Award winner, got his ACL injured, but he's on injured reserve with Tampa Bay. He was the best defensive player in the country. That said, they still have another 100-yard rusher. They have a great wide receiver. And the guy that played last year, remember they used 3 quarterbacks against EKU last year, and 2 of them, including Myers, who will be their starter this year against EKU. He's back. So I think they've done okay in plugging the holes. They have a lot of and I know, Jim, you've talked with their coach, Nathan Brown, but they did a pretty good job in retaining a veteran offensive line. And but you look at it, they have lost some big parts on offense, but I think their biggest concern is probably more on defense, don't you?
Yeah, the injury bug has really hit them on the defensive line. They've lost one guy I know for the season and have had an issue the last couple of weeks with another starter. Last week they had 2 guys that pretty much had to go 60 to 70 plays. They had some young guys that came in and spelled them every now and then, but that's tough. I mean, and Coach Brown and I talked about it a little bit. He said, 60, 70 plays a game on a defensive lineman is that's really stretching them to the breaking point. And you don't want to get them hurt either and end up having a bigger problem than you did when you started the game. So they're hoping to get one of those defensive linemen back, maybe have a core of 3 that they can switch out a little bit more. But Greg, you talked about the offensive line. I think it's an area of concern as well. And the reason I think it is because they've allowed 3.13 sacks a game. That is 7th in the conference in the UAC. So they've had their issues allowing the defense to get into the backfield and cause some problems. Now, what I saw on tape was a team that's adapted to that and gone to that short passing game that we saw the Colonels adapt to when they played Austin Peay in the second half, when Burkett probably looked his best all season, the second half against the Governors. That's what the Bears have kind of gone to a little bit more here in the last couple of games. The head scratchers I've got, they could only get by Utah Tech by 6 at home. And I'm still watching some of that video. I'm like, how did this happen? But they've had some issues on the offensive line as well as the defensive line. And they've had some issues in the secondary allowing the big play.
Yeah, you look at the total quarterback sacks, EKU, you mentioned their 25. Eastern has allowed 26. I mean, EKU's 7th most sacks in the country. They're 11th. Burkett, he had a pretty good, he didn't throw many passes against HCU, but he had a plus 50% total. I've got it written down here. Against HCU, he was 68%, 13 of 19, and he was 21 of 41 against West Georgia when they were playing catch up. But you're right. I mean, there's no downfield threat for Eastern Kentucky that I see. I mean, they've taken their shots. They've had a couple times guys have been open, couple times 50-50 ball hadn't gone their way. But when you look at a lot of these other teams they play, EKU hasn't hit any long passes this year.
And the flip side of that coin is that Central Arkansas does have a deep field threat. Malachi Henry is a fantastic player, great speed, runs great routes, has great hands. He is in the top 3 in 4 different categories, top 2 actually in 4 different categories in the UAC and receiving categories. He is a special player, and they've been able to replace Hale and Powell with Landon Chambers, who I think is a very, very capable back, second in the UAC in all-purpose yards. He can not only run the football, he's a good pass catcher out of the backfield too, and they will swing it to him and allow those wide receivers to block for him on the outside, which we saw 2 games ago really go against the Colonels.
The wide receiver you mentioned has made a third of their catches. He's made a third of their yards total. So he's a big threat. EKU doesn't have the big threat. They don't. Cal-Wise has seen so many double teams. It's been, I don't want to say saying it's a down year may not be fair to him because of it's a full offensive unit, but Cal-Wise has been neutralized by what's happened offensively and getting the defensive spotlight on him. So, and then again, you don't have Dixon all year long. I mean, he's been injured all year long. West has been banged up. Your tight ends are a little banged up, and you've had to move parts around offensive line. Bunn's been out now 3 games in a row. So you haven't had consistency on the field. You really haven't had consistency even in your lineup.
Well, and the offensive line has not given Burkett a lot of time to throw the football. And I think we can kind of all shake our head that Cal-Wise is not really the quick hitter in this receiving core. He's a guy that needs to develop his route a little bit. He needs to get loose, needs to shake free, needs to find the soft spot, needs to run that post pattern 15 yards down the field or across the field. He's not a guy you're going to hit on the slant a whole lot because all they really have to do is put a bigger safety or corner on him to shadow him. He needs a little time for things to develop, and Burkett's just not had that time.
You know, Jim, we ought to ask, and if you've listened to us on game day, which we've had a blast, just kind of talking in the first 30 minutes, and then Professor Chandler brings his trivia. I think he should just drop the class this week and go look at every play-by-play and see how many times EKU has gone 3 and out this year. I just wonder what the percentage is. I have no guess, but I would say of their drives, what do you think? At least a third of them?
I'd say at least 40%. That's where I was going to guess my gut was going anyway.
Do we want to tell Mr. Chandler that he has a graduate class assignment?
Homework.
Homework. He's busy.
I'll be late for that class. And it feels like those 3 and outs, there's never a good time for them, but it seems like they always come at a really bad time too, when the other team has just scored to maybe take the lead or something of that nature, where you have a quick 3 and out, and then you're like Jim said earlier, your defense has to go back on the field. That it just seems like there's never a good time.
The killer is when you get a turnover and you get 3 and out.
Yeah.
That is a just killer. It's going to deflate your sideline. It's going to take everybody out of the game. Because at that point, you're thinking in your head as an athlete, you're thinking, man, we just got a great play and we couldn't take advantage of it. If we can't do that, what can we do? Boom, you're out of the game and the other team gets all the momentum.
Do you feel like UCA they've kind of been up and down this year? Started off conference play, had that close game. Well, first of all, got thrashed against Tarleton State. Then they had the close win against Utah Tech, and you're thinking, okay, well, which version of Central Arkansas are we getting? Then they were able to respond a little bit, but then last week they gave up 12 points in the fourth quarter, had a 17-6 lead, and then lose by 1 to West Georgia. So are they playing their best, or is EKU getting them at a good time maybe?
Well, I'll start by saying they held West Georgia to a lot less points than EKU did. I mean, they had them down to 6 for 58, down to 12 for 58 and a half minutes, and then give up the touchdown with a minute and a half to go. I think their defense played better on this past weekend than it had in probably their previous 3 games, and that included a win over North Alabama. So I thought they played well enough to get the W over West Georgia. They just couldn't close it out. And Nathan Brown told me, he said, that's the toughest part about this week is taking those guys in the locker room and making them shake that free. You've just got to turn around. You got to have a short memory. You got to forget about it because you got a tough team coming in here this week. And remember, this is a stretch of the schedule for Central Arkansas. They're 6 of 8 away from home in the middle of their schedule. That is brutal right in the middle of the season. And so they're happy to get home. It's homecoming. The few times in an 8-week stretch that they get that, I think they'll shake it free pretty well. I think we'll see a Central Arkansas team that's ready to go.
Yeah, after EKU, it's at Austin Peay and at Southern Utah before they wrap up the season at home against Abilene Christian. So it is a very tough and challenging portion. All right, you ready for the question of the day, gentlemen?
Yes.
All right, it comes to us from Mark. Mark writes, what rivalry would you compare EKU and UCA to when Eastern was in the OVC?
Jacksonville State. I don't think it's as big a rivalry,
Right.
but it's both teams at 3 and 5 this year, so it doesn't feel like a big game. But because of the Hail Mary 2 years ago down there, Carter scores at the end. We're down 25 back in 22 and 21 and came all the way back and won that. We've just had some great games against them, and I think there's respect between the two programs, and the games have been exciting. That's where I would go.
If I'm thinking only of close plays that decided games, the games that were decided at the end, I would think Murray. I would have thrown them in there because there were a lot of those games that were classic that were decided in the last few minutes, if not the last few seconds. So I'd throw that, although, rivalry. Okay. Yeah, sure. But still, I'd put it on that same level.
Yeah.
You're talking about rivalries, and you think back the last few years, EKU's had all these, we called them cardiac kernels, all these games that came right down to the end. All their losses have been pretty wide double-figure losses. All their wins this year, all 3, have been double-figure wins. We haven't had a game coming right down to the end this year.
Always time for a first. Yep.
This could be the week.
I would kind of add this to the question of the week. I almost think that now, if we look at it right now, that EKU Austin Peay is a bigger rivalry than EKU Central Arkansas. Just feels a little bit more like a rivalry. They're a little closer. You had that previous relationship in the OVC. Just feels like more of a rivalry for Austin Peay.
Yeah, I think it's probably overtaking it now, but I was looking since the start that when EKU got out of the OVC, I thought Central Arkansas was the team, but I think it has passed the East-West hemisphere line and maybe gone a little bit to Austin Peay the last couple of years. But there's no Eastern Western, there's no Eastern Middle Tennessee. I mean, we're not where we used to be.
Western.
The railroad track divides it.
Yeah.
The railroad track divides it. Yep.
In more ways than one on the way to Conway. Inside joke there.
Yep.
West for the win.
Yep. All right. That is our question of the day. And we appreciate Mark for bringing that to us. Again, if you have a question for next week's show that you would like us to answer, email us at ekusportsnet@gmail.com and we will get to it. All right. We are on the air in Conway, Arkansas, 4 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Eastern kick. Guys, I'll save you a seat on the plane.
I guess I'm sitting in the middle again between you two big boys.
As you should.